here. It is one of those years.
Yeah, that's true.
Mirna, how are you? How's your son? Good? Does he work?
He's complaining about the life.
I'm sorry?
He's complaining about the life.
He's complaining about life. Well, maybe you should slap him.
He just starts from.
But you know, yeah, it's tough. Yeah. I don't think any of us have it all together, you know. You should bring him to class. Hello?
How old is your son?
19.
19.
Yeah, bring him in.
He's turning 20 next April.
Okay.
I used to think that there was somebody in charge, like the people running everything were smart. Doesn't seem like it now.
Yeah. But if he wakes up early and he's got nothing to do and he's open to the idea of coming to Laney, bring him to class. We'll make him some tea, give him some donuts, find him a girlfriend. Hello, Leah. How are you? Did you get any news from schools?
No, that will be in April.
What is it? It's February? You're hoping to go where?
Reed College.
Where?
Reed College.
And what are you going to study?
Medicinal chemistry and drug discovery. Perhaps synthetic biology, but I don't know how much.
I'm sure you'll be great. Once you get done, you'll get married, have a few kids, be a professional woman, making money, pushing your husband around. Hugh, how are you?
Pretty good. I went through a pretty good story this thing. I'm just right now.
You did what?
Played through a pretty good story. There was like a game that it's like a visual novel.
Oh, what was it?
It's based on Use of the Red Chamber, a Chinese novel, and it's like you're kind of like following this person, right? He's the son of like this noble family, and he doesn't know how to express himself. He always buries his feelings inside of him, and you follow his journey to like kind of accept his feelings, to like be a normal person.
Huh? Good for you. Cynthia, are you well? Tasha, how are the kids? When are they going to leave the house?
What's that?
When are they going to leave the house?
15 years.
Oh man, what a torture. Yeah. You guys all remember Cassie from Sacramento? Do you have any questions for her?
Such a beauty. Humanities.
Leah, anything you want to talk about?
I suppose it would be in relation to the question I submitted for funding. Why exactly
To be what?
To be animals.
To be what?
To be animals.
Oh, to be animals. Imagine a scenario, Leo, and we're talking about the 21st century. There are cultural normatives that there are certain ways we should behave. There are do's and don'ts. We have evolved to have certain emotions that perhaps people 200, 300, 400 years ago didn't have. Jean-Jacques Rousseau wrote this book some years ago that we're no longer natural, that it's good to be natural, the natural animal, that a man, according to him, should go to a woman and say, I find you very attractive, can we have sex? And the woman would say yes, and then they would engage in this intimate act, and then the man would leave, and the woman would look and say, well, that was a wonderful natural man. Hello. And the truth is, I think when you're writing a book or a novel, or where you happen to be somewhat creative, sitting there and having some hippie thoughts, all the stuff sounds really, really, really good. But in reality, it just doesn't work. If I was to give you an example in a very, I suppose, pragmatic, realistic way, and I suppose at some point you yourself will experience this. Hello. Imagine for a moment that you like a guy, and I'm not even going to get into the anatomy of how liking or attraction comes about. It's mysterious, it's complicated, but all those things aside, one of the problems with attraction is that you keep replaying the image or the component of the thing that has brought about attraction. And as you keep replaying this image, you're going to develop some feelings and emotions. And out of that, hope and dreams are going to come about. And you're going to fantasize about your future. In other words, you haven't even spoken to this man. You haven't even held his hand. You have no idea who he is, what he is, where he's from. But it doesn't mean that you're not able to create fantasies about a potential future relationship. You become attached. I mean, it's something that, you keep thinking about Brad Pitt. You're never going to meet him, but, you'll think about him day in and day out. Okay. And let's say after a while, the two of you get a chance to talk, then you guys go out and have coffee. And because you've been so invested in him, imaginatively and emotionally speaking, he takes you home or you take him home. And you guys have sex the way animals do. It's a bit more elaborate, of course, we're not like rabbits or monkeys, it's far more complex for us, especially again in the 21st century, or maybe less so, I don't really know. I mean, after the 1960s and contraceptives, the truth is sex became a bit more casual for all of us. Intimacy no longer had the sort of meaning it once used to, but perhaps that for another day. And then he looks at you at a certain point and says, Leah, it was a fun time. Thank you so much. And you say, well, are we going to meet again? Says, no. Can I have your number? I can text you maybe? No. I mean, we had our fun. I think the chapter's over. So have a nice life. See you around. And the truth is, you have behaved very much like an animal in the sense that maybe not so much in creating imaginative stories, but in the act of maybe just having sex. And you realize there are two components about this. There is the imagination and then there's the imagination in play. And the problem with us is that the two get mixed up. And in the two becoming united, they create complexities. And the other part of this has to do with the social setting. If you want to live in society, there's got to be some norms. You know, in the 1960s and 70s, there'd be no lock on doors, front doors. No, in certain places, there was trust. Everybody knew everybody. Communities were relatively small. Time passes, culture changes, stories change, media changes, and with all those changes, the human brain becomes rewired a little. And you realize that you can't trust people anymore, not that much, at least not the way you used to. You kind of see them less as decent and more like animals and brutes, and so you create locks. If you want to live in a society that's relatively harmonious and safe, social contract. Give me some of your pleasures, Leah. I'll tame them for you, and I'll tame other people's pleasures and instincts so that everyone can live in harmony. But in giving me your pleasures, I will, and in taming them, and in me taming them, some of your freedoms are going to be removed. In other words, someone in this class may just say, you know what, I don't like you, I don't like this class. You know what grade does? You know what fear does? It may all be manufactured in a very artificial way, but it keeps this class running, at least superficially, in a relatively harmonious way. Where if you want to ask a question, you raise your hand. You just don't open your mouth and scream. There are certainly certain parts to you and I that are very animalistic. The tragedy is there is this other part of us that is a little bit more evolved. Whether it's, we've just been wired this way, or it's social manufacturing, I don't really know. The idea that we've created religion for the past maybe 10, 15, 20,000 years, political structures, social structures, it just goes to show you how complicated human life can be. That we can't simply live the way goats or lions or donkeys live. It just doesn't work for us. Ask anyone who's married, Leah, will tell you. It's not fun to express yourself in a way that's not acceptable by your companion. Right, Ahmed? Fuke and then Jesse. Yeah.
I'm kind of curious, but what does it mean to be an animal good enough to be? How did you become a human animal?
I think there are these basic needs that you and I have. The desire for food, desire for shelter. And we are engaged animals. In other words, just laying in bed is not going to do it for us. We're not like cats that can sleep for hours, or dogs that can just sit somewhere and watch TV. We just need to be entertained in some shape or form, But the basic needs, we are very much the same as all the other animals under the sun. The problem with us is that the basic needs are not enough. If you read the Gospel of Luke, I think that's the right Gospel, I may be wrong, that a human being does not live by bread alone. It's a comment made some 2,000 years ago. Or if you kind of take this all the way back to some 5,000 years ago, the Epic of Gilgamesh. It's one of these ancient texts. In fact, it was this first book that was gifted to human beings. That there comes a point where this man comes to realize, just going around beating up people, and hurting them, and having sex with them, it's just not enough. To the point where his mother, Ninsun, goes to the altar of the gods and says to them, "Why have you given me a son whose heart knows no rest?" An animal can kind of just eat and shit and walk around and then die. You don't need any funeral services. You don't need a graveyard. Human beings are far more complex. We have memories. We have feelings. We have, and so we create all these different tools to survive. Survival can be physical, but there is also psychological survival. And you come to realize, yes, you have the food, you have the shelter, you have the clothing, but once in a while you walk home and it's just not enough. You want something more. So, do you currently are in a relationship? There comes a point where, just in case you were to be with someone else, you may come to realize that you're being used in some shape or form. And there comes a point where you kind of rise up, you rebel, you revolt, and you say, where exactly do we stand? Are we committed? It's just like a ridiculous fling. What are we doing? And what you're basically saying is, well, my belly is full, I have a roof over my head, but the truth is psychologically I'm attached to you. And not knowing exactly, where I stand creates not so much of a stability, and that creates agitation, frustration, irritation. And we don't like that. We don't like disturbances like that, psychological ones or physical ones. So you try to find some confirmation that tell me that you love me, tell me that we are monogamous, tell me that I'm with you and you're with me. And if the answer is yes, well, you can rest comfortably, at least for a time being. If the answer is no, then you feel as if you've been betrayed. Whether those emotions, again, are socially and culturally manufactured, we can kind of speak about those things maybe a little bit later on. Because some of the emotions and feelings that we have today as 21st century animals or folks, people 50 years ago didn't have. And you watch the movie Fiddler on the Roof, So their definition of love is you get married, the wife stays home, she has babies, she cleans the house, cooks food, and that's basically it. Fast forward 21st century, a woman staying home and cleaning the house and having babies, that's not a sufficient meaning to a woman's life and identity, And so love is a bit more romanticized, it's a bit more emotionally filled, and so,
Then would you say it's like our drive for happiness that's separated from animal? Animals like eat and sleep enough, right? But it seems like we always want more.
Well, it's something we talked about yesterday in our philosophy class. Many apologies, Isabel. One of the problems with the word happiness is that it wasn't advertised to us it's only really the beginning of the 18th century. And that's with the age of reason, what we call enlightenment. And then human beings were no longer categorized as animals, but rational animals. Not instinctual animals, but rational animals, which means that you can, and one of the things about rationality is the following. It doesn't matter if you're in a good mood or a bad mood. 2 + 2, it's always going to be 4. And what happened in the 18th century is we're looking for answers. We're looking for certain ways of looking at life where it has nothing to do with your feelings or emotions or your moods or culture. 2 + 2 = 4. Whether you go to India, Africa, Europe, or the Middle East, it matters very little. And so that was the thing that they were seeking. And they had argued that if you can find that, that'll be your quest of happiness. That's not the way that people, thought about life or happiness for many, many thousands of years. And it's really difficult to convince people there is no such thing as happiness. The only way you can be happy is, look, do you know much about this woman named Elisabeth Kubler-Ross? She is this tiny little German woman, if not mistaken, who became very interested and passionate about sickness, death, and dying, and what people go through, when they get old, when they get sick, and when they're almost dead. One of the things that happens to people, she argued, is that they go through 5 stages, And I mention this for the following reason. Right now, you have a very intimate relationship with a concept called happiness. It's been sold to you by the culture, it's been sold to you by social media, it's been sold to you by the books and the magazines and the conversations you have with your people, okay? And just to give you an example, it's a cheesy example I've always used, so forgive me, especially for those even who have heard heard this example in the past, which is, at Super Bowl halftime, there's Beyonce singing in her Mercedes Benz, and she's driving down this cliff. To her left is the ocean, to her right is Yosemite, this forest is beautiful, and the wind is blowing through her hair. And at the end of the advertisement, she says, "This is happiness." Now, if you happen to be, coming from a culture that has no depth in their storytelling, you're going to kind of be duped by the companies behind closed doors who have created this particular piece of advertisement. So you start working at In-N-Out and Home Depot, you work 60, 70, 80 hours, some overtime, extra cash, and you save your money. And you buy a Mercedes Benz, and you live in Hayward, okay? And then you say, yes, you bring the car home, it's like midnight, no traffic, it's a great time. And the roof is open, you look up and the stars are out there, they're all winking at you. Fuke, you did a great job. And you say, I'm going to wake up at 7 in the morning, drive to Laney College. Well, part of the reason you buy the Mercedes is you have been sold this idea or concept by Beyonce, but it's not really so much Beyonce. It's all the powerful companies behind closed doors, Jeff Bezos and Mercedes Benz, and that's how they do people, okay? Then you wake up in the morning, you take a shower, you wear your best outfit, and you say, I'm going to drive to Laney. People are going to look at me on the highway. The animals are going to stop and look at me. The waves are going to stop and look at me. The God is going to stop and look at me. And I'm going to create this huge traffic because everybody will be envious of the car I'm driving. And we'll talk about the emotion envy, one of the 7 deadly sins, one of these days. And so as you leave your house and you get to Highway 580, if I'm not mistaken, or 880, you look to your left, there is concrete. You look to your right, there is concrete. You look ahead, there is traffic. You look behind you, there is traffic. And this thing that was supposed to bring you a great amount of happiness is now the cause of your frustration. You invested so much of your emotions, so much of your money, so much of your time, so much of your intellectual prowess into purchasing happiness only to realize it's a dead end. You've been duped, deceived, conned by a society that doesn't really look at you as a human being, but a customer of sorts. That they take away your time, they take away your youth, they take away your money, and in the end, all you have is disappointment. That's the first thing you need to understand, okay? Having said all of that, I have no idea what that I'm talking about. I've forgotten. So, oh yes, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Let me give it to you in this different way. Imagine for a moment that I have cancer. Am I a human being, Fuke? Do I have dreams? Do I have hopes? Do I desire to live another 50,000 years? Do I have a wife and kids? Do I want to see them graduate? Do I want to see them get married and have children? Do I want to be a grandfather? What happens if I go to the doctor today and he tells me that I have 6 months to live? Well, I know, it's over, but how's it going to make me feel? Not happy. So in not being happy, am I going to accept this beautiful news, or am I going to be angry? Or am I going to ask for a second opinion? No, it doesn't work that way. If you and I are dating, and I love you and you love me, and one day I come home and say, Fuke, I no longer want to be with you. What, you just going to accept it? No, you're going to fight. You're going to ask the reasons as to why I'm leaving you, right? So remember, one of the things about our situation in life is that we don't, I mean, unless you're profoundly trained well, you're not going to accept tragedy so easily. So if I tell you, Fuke, that you suck as a human being, well, that's a painful news. You know what you're going to do? You're going to ask for a second opinion. You're going to, get Jesse here after class and, Jess, I feel kind of offended by what this guy said to me, that I'm like a fucked up human being. Do you think I'm messed up? And of course, Jesse, from a little interaction we've had in the past few weeks, he's kind of optimistic, he sees a cup that only has a drop of water as almost a full cup. He's going to look at you and say, no, I think you're a great guy. You're young. The future is very bright for you. And that's the second opinion. If on the other hand, he was to tell you the same exact thing that I told you, you're going to kind of hold Isabel after class and say, Isabel, do you think like I'm messed up? And the point I'm trying to make is, if I was to tell you that life is cancer, you're going to ask for a second opinion. You're going to go to your social media page. You're going to read a book. You're going to talk to your parents, your friends. Somehow you're going to say, no, Amir is wrong. The point I'm trying to make is, whenever tragedy befalls you, whenever you realize that you've been duped into buying a happiness that never existed, you're going to deny it. I was wrong. I made the wrong choice. I spent the money on the wrong thing. There comes a point where you realize that you really do have cancer. You're just really stupid. Which means that you no longer really have the option to deny. And in the absence of denying, you have no choice but to accept the fact that, you know what? Your life amounts to nothing. And that's going to make you angry. And that's the second stage you have to do. Anger. I mean, consider Mike Tyson at the age of 15 and Mike Tyson at the age of 60. These are two very, very, very different human beings. At the age of 15, Mike Tyson couldn't simply accept the fact that his parents sucked, that society sucked, politics sucks, poverty sucks, being black in America sucks, everything about life is bad. At the age of, and he couldn't control his anger, so much so that he became like a world champion, heavyweight division. At the age of 18, unheard of. It's like Friedrich Nietzsche around the 19th century being a professor of philosophy at the age of 24. You know how long it took Mike Tyson to accept who and what he is and where he came from? 50 years. So you're going to be angry, and I'm going to tell you why you're going to be angry. You're in school now. There are going to be lots of classes you won't like, and there are going to be lots of assignments that you have to do that you won't like. Lots of teachers you won't like. You'll be done with Laney, and you'll be very excited. Your parents may even be proud. And then you're going to sit around the dinner table, and they're going to say, so, East Bay, when is it going to start? In like 2 weeks. And you realize, well, you just celebrated this cheesy graduation from Laney College. This bigger world awaits you, which is East Bay or Yale or Oxford. And then you kind of summon up your courage and struggle through another 2 years of schooling. Then, of course, like all these idiots who go to these graduation ceremonies, you wear this like black clownish outfit, you celebrate as if you accomplished something. And you have, don't get me wrong, it's all about success and happiness and all those things. And then you take your costume home and your diploma and you sit on your bed and you say, okay, now what? Well, then you go, and the now what means, man, 4 years of struggle and I kind of feel empty now. What the hell do I do with this now? Now, if you happen to have come from a certain background where education is highly valued and your parents, hello, Abi, how are you? Your parents push you a little bit. They say, Fuke, bachelor's we are immigrants, man. You got to go all the way to the top. And you say, what is that? You got to get a master's. So you spend another year and a half, 2 years getting a master's. And immigrants, we are poor people. We don't major in like music or the creative arts. You become a doctor, you become an engineer, you go into business and computer science. That's what we do, right? And so you get your master's, and then you say, well, this is just really the continuation of being at Laney College. It's just called like a university, but it's the same stuff. Then you have this dread of being interviewed by these various different companies, and eventually you get a job. And your first paycheck, man, you're excited. After the third or the fourth or the fifth, only to realize that you only have like $20 in your bank account after slaving away 40 hours a week. You realize that you like your job, but for some strange reason, it's not enough. Hello?
You know why those 270 closed?
270? Oh, why it's closed? I don't know.
I have class there, but it's closed, so I thought like maybe they changed the room or something.
Did you knock on the door?
Yeah.
What class is it?
English.
English. Go to the 7th floor, tower building. Ask the secretary or the dean by the end of the hall. Her name is Beth. Say, I demand justice. La ilaha illallah. That was hard work. So the point I'm trying to make, that it's going to take you a long, long time, and you have to go through so many different stages in life, where you say, man, I did all of the stuff to be happy, but nothing brought me happiness, and that's going to lead you to anger. The problem with anger is that the emotions are very, very intense, and they are raw. If you want to know what a mature anger looks like, listen to some interviews by James Baldwin. You know who he is? Yeah, I mean, just if you remember, listen to some of the things that he says. And his debates with some white folks. Beautiful. Or if that's too much of a stretch for you, ask yourself, how did Picasso create Guernica? It's, a pencil sketch. And what you have is a man, who wakes up at 6 in the morning, puts his Noah's bagel in the toaster. They come out and they're toasty and they're warm, they're beautiful. Put some cream cheese and some marmalade, jam. You know what they are? Yeah, man, it's delicious. Anyways, and then he's sitting on his sofa. He's about to put that bagel in his mouth with some, Pete's coffee. And all of a sudden there's this breaking news. The Nazis bombed this village. And if you're an artist, you just are sensitive. I mean, artists are temperamentally, they're very, very fragile. But out of that fragility, they create beautiful pieces of art. Kind of like James Baldwin. I mean, you look at his body, just his physical stature. He's thin. He doesn't weigh very much. He looks very fragile, but intellectually, he's like Yahweh. He's powerful, And so, he hears of this news that this village was bombed. Instead of becoming angry and going to the gym and beating the crap out of this boxing bag, he sits and creates this sketch that depicts the horrors of war, horrors of murder, what happens when people lose their lives, their loved ones, and all those things. That's a very mature expression of anger or any intense emotion. It's kind of like, for those of us in this class who've been in love and we have been separated from our lover, if you happen to find yourself in certain moods where you sit and you write poetry. Some people get depressed, severely depressed. Some people put that depression into words and they become Khalil Gibran. Khalil Gibran? Khalil Gibran, yeah. I only say Khalil because Westerners don't know how to say khe. They're not as evolved as, So, so once you realize that you've tried all and you've knocked on all these doors in hopes of buying happiness or finding happiness, and all the doors in the end they prove themselves to be hollow. There are no doors left to be knocked on. So you become sad. Then you do something really interesting. You create the institution of marriage. And you say, only God do us part, or only death do us part. And that promise, it means your emotions no longer have any impact on your decision making. Finances don't have any impact. You can't cheat, you can't have an affair, none of those things take place. When you make a promise, marriage vows in the church before God, it means that nothing down here has the power to destroy it. For the first time in our human history, we create marriage not because marriage is good and not because it is natural for us. It's the only way we can create stability. And it's the only way we can find a modicum of happiness in stability. So you know what you do to find happiness? You begin to bargain. You know, like you're failing this class and that's making you miserable. So you come to my office and you say, Amir, yeah, Fiuk, what do you want? I brought like a truckload of coffee, dark roast, San Francisco Bay from Costco, £3 each, $1,000 I spent. Can I give you this and instead you can give me like a B? Now that is bargaining. You bargain with life. You know what you're doing in this class right now, Fiuk? You're bargaining with life. You could be home, you could be in bed, you could watch TV, you could hang out in the sun and work on your tan. But you know what you do? You say to life, I'm going to give, 4 years of my life to this stupid place called Laney. And in return, I am sure life will make me prosper. Give me a 4.0. That 4.0 will get me to Yale. Yale will get me a job. Job will get me some money. Money will buy me a wife and kids. You realize it doesn't matter the number of bargaining you make with life. Nothing works. Then you get really sad. And it's not just like a typical sadness. I'm talking about you get really depressed. And you know what depression is, right, Fiuk? There is no hope in it. There is no light in it. There is no life in it. You pull the blinds and you just sit. No amount of medication is going to do you much good. I mean, you can get a temporary release by smoking or drinking or whatever, but for the most part, your root is depression. Then there comes a point, if you are lucky, and if you haven't been completely destroyed by depression, you get to the fifth and final stage of your growth. You say, you know what? Capitalism. What is it that capitalism does? It sells empty dreams. Super Bowl halftime. People endlessly talking about justice and fairness. Bad Bunny and Good Bunny and Beyonce. Then you realize that you have spent your youth, all of your vitality, further fueling the system called capitalism. You understand all these stages really, really well. And then you know what you do, the final stage. You accept your limitations, you accept your loss, and you accept life the way it is. This is just the way life is. A dead end. Every desire eventually turns to dust. And if you can accept that, that's happiness in loss. Or if that's too much work for you, just read some works by Arthur Schopenhauer. Some gloomy, pessimistic philosophy of the 19th century, I think. Very simple. Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer. I don't know, it's German, I think. It's like TX F-E-R. I'm just kidding. I don't know. He puts everything in just a couple of words. Human life is a mistake. And it's going to take you many, 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 many years to be okay with the mistake. I guess what I'm just telling you is there is no happiness, man. Good luck. Can he go and then you? Yeah, Jesse?
Oh, I came across a quote that reminded me of this class. It said, it was Socrates. He said, by all means get married. Because if you have a good marriage, then you'll be happy. But if you have a bad marriage, then you'll be a philosopher.
But that says a lot of stuff about women. That requires a bit of unpacking.
I thought it was funny.
It is funny. I mean, Socrates is a funny guy. He just never gives us a belly laugh. You know, he's like Jesus Christ. You know, you read all these pages in the New Testament. No one says that Jesus actually like laughed. You know, he didn't find anything funny. Muhammad didn't laugh. The Buddha. I mean, they're very satirical. You know, they're like Dave Chappelle or Cat Williams or Jerry Seinfeld. But at any rate, you know, I have forgotten your name. Nisa. Yeah. Nisa.
So, first of all, I think Jesus is very funny.
The what?
I think Jesus is very funny. I think he has a lot of jokes. Like, you know, he calls people rebellious out his children. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I think Jesus is very funny. Especially in the New Testament. But what I really wanted to say was, there's this guy, Eckhart Tolle, that I've been like looking into.
I am so sorry to hear that.
Really?
You know, Eckhart Tolle, it's just, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, what intrigued me about him was that he actually, Kendrick Lamar got like some, when you listen to his lyrics, he talks a lot about his philosophy and music. And he said that he was like one of his main like pillars and like when he was going through some really dark times, right? Because what Kendrick Lamar was dealing with was like his ego, you know? And so coming from not having anything and not having much, he bought a bunch of stuff and he reached fame, you know what I mean? And had to understand that his ego was the reason that he was doing these things, stepping out on his child's mother, you know what I mean?
So you like him, Eckhart Tolle? You like Tolle, yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say I like him. I just find it interesting his play on the understanding of one's ego.
Okay, so a couple of things.
And that's what it sounded like you were talking about, where you can get all of these things and you kind of get duped by the image of like success, you know what I mean? And like when, like, but then it's like, okay, I have the cars, I got the house, I got the wife, I got the kids, but like, then it's like, but still, there's still some emptiness, you know?
Let me say a couple of things about people like Eckhart Tolle, Sadhguru. Sadhguru is a little different. He's Indian, he lives in India. He sees poverty on a daily basis. He does a lot of good work. I mean, I'm sure Eckhart Tolle does the same thing. Here's the thing. Have you heard of Woody Allen? So Woody Allen made a movie some years ago. It's called Whatever Works. And if you know Woody Allen a little bit, he has this, he's kind of like an existentialist. I mean, temperamentally, there is something very depressing about him, which gives rise to like deep reflection about life and the meaning of life and all those things. One of the things that Woody Allen had suggested in this movie is the following. I mean, kind of like what Viktor Frankl went through during World War II. Viktor Frankl, who was a Jew but held captive in a Nazi camp, when he was released, he came up with this concept called logotherapy. Nisa, you know what that is? Logotherapy basically means that you and I are now living in a culture. It's no longer that you don't have any money, and it's no longer that you don't have a flat screen TV, and it's no longer that you don't have sex, and it's no longer that you don't have food. What you don't have is meaning. That's the new poverty of modern people, the absence of meaning. So he goes before the Congress, he goes before very many politicians, powerful people, and asks them to create a different set of narratives for people. So that despite having everything in life, there is no reason for people to be depressed. I mean, 5 out of 7 Americans depressed, that's devastating. The most technologically advanced country on the face of this planet, and yet about 45% of the population live under the poverty belt. I mean, that's, it's a awful way of being as a country such as this, okay? Now, if Eckhart Tolle works for you, more power to you. If the devil works for you, in the sense that it gives you meaning, identity, purpose, fine. There are kids who have no dad, who have no mom, and they join a gang. It works for them. The only thing you can hope for is that hopefully it's a gang that steals things, sells them. They go to Safeway, buy food, and feed their bellies and help other people in poverty. That's the only thing you can hope for. But people join gangs because we are social animals. They want to belong. So if that works for you, fine. But
Totally doesn't work for me at all. But the thing is like, I just find it interesting. Like, for example, right, to go along with that, right? Okay, Jesus works. I study the Bible, and I'm very involved in the Bible. Am I a Christian? Not necessarily, right? But I do enjoy reading the works of what's written in the Bible. And I try to live as closely aligned with that as I possibly can. Because that works for me, right? But also, I feel like if that's what's working for me, but I'm also a human that has ego, right? So not I'm not asking you. I mean, I feel like it's like in my mind all the time, like, am I trying to be most closely aligned with this, or am I letting my ego get in the way of me, like, pursuing what it is that I actually want in life? So it's just a little bit close.
Yeah. So look, people like Tolle, Sadhguru, Jordan Peterson, Jesus Christ, hello, Leah. Can I be honest? You sure? It's not about that. I'll just sum it up in this way. The less you know, the happier you are. I don't know if you're married or not, but if you are, your husband or your companion is very lucky that he doesn't have very much access to your interior. How you feel about him sometimes, how you feel about yourself, how you feel about life, because that protects you. If on the other hand, you were to keep a journal and you were to write your truest, all your feelings in there, what you think about yourself, about your companion, about your future, and if you was to have a glance of that, I think that both of you would need to go to couples therapy. You can only love because you don't know.
No, I'm only laughing because I do know.
Okay.
If you knew that if my fiance knew half of the things that went on in my mind, yes, absolutely.
And that's the point, you know. Yeah.
I saw this great video the other day, older lady, and she said, all this like advice for marriages and relationships is all like talk to each other. And she said, no. The secret to happiness is not talking to each other. And my wife and I really found that.
Yeah, no talking.
Some distance and
No,
Yeah.
my fiance's in another country.
Well, that's the reason why you're happy.
I'm happy, so, yeah.
Isabel?
And the more time, not like I guess, but the more time a person and intimacy rate every single day.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think men die in retirement so quickly. I mean, first they have to see their wives, or the wives have to see them all the time. You're absolutely right. I mean, it's like anything else in life, you know. Do you know Zachary's Pizza? Have you been there? Yeah. What do you mean? You've never been there? Don't you live in Oakland? Well, it's the same thing. You never been to Zachary's? You have money? Does he have money? No, but does he have money? Your boyfriend. Well, demand that he takes you to Zachary's tonight. And you need to ask for, when you go there, I mean, do you eat a lot? I mean, you're young, so yeah. So get like a medium or a large deep dish, spinach, mushroom. There are 2 branches or 3 close by, but the closest to you guys is like either on College or the one on Grand. Just sit there for 45 minutes while the pizza is getting ready for you. And then it comes to your table. First, it's a good-looking pizza. Then you put the first slice in your mouth, and it's like you're transported to the Garden of Eden. You know, you and your companion feel like completely naked, and you stand before God, you just keep eating pizza. You know, once the first slice is over, it's not that you're hungry anymore, but gluttony gets in, you know. And with gluttony, then comes greed, which is you stretch out your arm and then you have another slice. And the second slice is not as delicious as the first one was. And the point I'm trying to make, all of life is about that. You know, that with more experience, with more exposure, things become less and less and less and less interesting. So just in case you ever become interested as to why someone like Jesus walks to his suicide, why someone like Malcolm X walks to a suicide, why someone like Muhammad walks to a suicide. It's simply because they have tasted so much of life and they have tasted so much of the callousness of people and society that their patience and their desire for those things have grown so much less. And they say, you know what, it's really not worth it anymore. I just don't want to eat this anymore. You know, so when you say that the more you see your boyfriend, the less you like him, and the less you see your boyfriend, the more you desire him. It's a very natural way to be, you know. And one of the, I think, problems with relationships, especially in this day and age, is that you really need, like, not so much friends. Friends suck, unless you have, like, mature ones. You need, like, family members. If, like, I am your husband, I come home tonight, the truth is you're not this well of creativity and inspiration, Isabel. I'm not going to look at you and say, wow, she's so interesting. No, you're not. You know, and you're not going to look at me and say, wow, I'm interested in the way he thinks. You won't even be interested. So to escape this black hole that's about to consume both of us into oblivion, you know what you do? Let's go to my mom's house. Now, it'll be good if I can like your mom and your dad, because then we can go there, you hang out with your mom, I hang out with your dad, we sit and shoot some, I don't know, play ping pong or play billiard or whatever, go for a walk, have a conversation. And then on the drive back, you're going to say to me, Amir, yes, Isabel? Honey, what is it? My mom, she got me upset. And then we'll spend the next like 2 hours talking about how stupid your mom is and how that stupidity impacts you. It's beautiful. You know why? Because the conversation is not about me and you. It's about your mom, gossip. And if you and I are able to have this gossip for the next 20 years, we have a healthy relationship. The problem now is that nobody has anybody. You know, I come out, Isabel, how you doing? Fine, how was your day? Well, you know, I went to class and I talked about ABCD. Now, the truth is, I've been doing this shit for the past 30 years. And, you know, I've been married for 40 years. You know exactly what they do in the classroom. And it's just a habit on your part to say, so, honey, how was class? And for me, and not to sleep on the sofa in a few hours, I say, well, you know, I went to class and I saw the student and they said this and I said that. And while I'm saying all these things in a very impassioned way, you're like cooking and saying, when is this guy going to shut up? Right? And then I shut up eventually. And then you realize, man, this silence in this house is deafening. I need to do something. And then you realize, you know what? There comes a point I look at you and I feel nothing, and you look at me, you feel nothing. And that's the problem. It's not that I don't like you. The problem is our life doesn't have very many sources of distraction. You know? I need you to have like crummy family. So our conversation can revolve around how shitty they are. And then I need to have like a good family. So you and I can sit and compare and contrast endlessly. That's how it's done. I mean, talking is great as long as it's not about your relationship. Oh, I'm so sorry. Zachary's. The problem with Zachary's is that you have to wait for 45 minutes. That's like, you have to generate conversation. That's just go to round table, 10 minutes.
You don't go on the lunch special though. Slow three, slicing the salad.
Yeah, you know, that's a great idea. Lunch special, it's cheaper. 12 to 3, yeah. When you go there, then, you know, 10-minute wait, no need for conversation. Which means that your relationship can last an extra like 6 months. Yeah. Ahmed.
Talking about the conversation waiting like for food. Does anything go through your mind when you like go to restaurants and see couples sitting there waiting for food and they're on their phone for 45 minutes?
There was a guy some years ago. Have you heard of his name? What was his name, Cassie? Pascal. He was French. He loved croissants. You know what he called us? Creatures of divergence. It means the following. The truth is, Ahmed, you're not here to learn anything. And I have long given up trying to teach anything to anyone, if I had anything to teach. Come to class, I'm a little animated, you know, tell some jokes, make some people laugh. Alexis, hello, how are you? I'm well. I'm not laughing at you, it just... Look, you know, I have been married for like 5 years, 10 years. Okay, so we go to Zachary's Pizza. Well, you want me to look at you and talk to you? About what? Nobody gives a shit about politics, so that's out the window. You're not religious, I'm not religious. What do you want to talk about? The Epstein file? How long is that going to take? Like 10 minutes? What else do you want to talk about? Donald Trump? How long is that going to take? 10 minutes? You know, social media, I'm consumed by news, man. I mean, I read the things that you read. I listen to the things that you listen to. You don't have to regurgitate what you've told, what I myself have listened to. I don't need to hear it from you. You're uglier. Your voice is far worse than one of those people on the news. You know, they're chosen very, very carefully for their looks, for their tone of voice. You know, your voice is coarse. It hurts my ears. So what? You want me to like go to Zachary's with you, sit there for 45 minutes and do what with you? Talk about how great our kids are? How great our marriage is? Well, you want to talk about Eckhart Toilet? The New Age movement? No, man. Give people a break. I mean, the only way that their marriages are surviving is through cell phones. They sit there, they, look at something. And then once in a while, the wife will look at the husband and say, well, look at the way they're doing it. Let's do that tonight. Well, that keeps the marriage going for another few weeks. What's wrong with that? Now, the problem with you is the following. Can I tell you what the problem with you is? And this is like free insight, no need for therapy. This generation is going to have some issues because we are put in two different worlds. We have seen our parents not knowing what running water looks like, no electricity looks like, no internet looks like, no cell phones look like. Our parents' generation were used to having conversations and having dinner around the table. The kids of this generation, which is me, have access to two worlds. The world of my parents and the new world. The world of technology versus the world of actually looking at someone in the face, in the eyes, and talking to them. I'm conflicted whenever I use my phone because I want to be like my parents. My kids, they don't know what it means to sit by the table. They don't really know what it means to have conversations. They don't really know what it means to be bored. They don't really know what it means to be poor. So when my kids go to Zachary's and watch people be on their cell phones, you know what they're going to say? Mom, can I have a cell phone? I think once this particular generation and maybe one more, we are eradicated, this new generation will be very, very, very different. I mean, they'll be severely fucked up.
Like worse?
Oh, far worse. Are you kidding? Far, far, far worse.
You don't think there's better?
No. I mean, you are what you eat. All you have to do is look around you and see what the social media is feeding us. It's all about Kim Kardashian. And so if you, for example, look at your parents, if you can look at, the Great Depression in the 1920s, you had functioning alcoholics. I mean, they were really functioning. And despite times being tough, people just had thick skin. Today, Jesus Christ, you can't talk to people. I mean, all of us in this class have like trigger points. You have a past, the past hasn't been processed the right way, you're far too scared to look at the past and all the shit that lives inside you. And anyone who reminds you of those things, you're gonna flip. What sort of society you have? Look at America, man. We've had over 1,000 shootings in the past 7 months. It's no way to live. Pornography happens to be the biggest money-making machine in this country. Epstein, Lindsey Graham, Jim Jordan,
I was just telling
Eckhart Toilet.
I was just telling my friend the other day, when I used to, I grew up in Oakland, and I used to see I don't know, the prostitutes used to be different. They used to be classy.
Yeah.
Before I even knew what a prostitute was, I was like, what are they talking about?
I mean, last night I went
I
out.
was like, why do they keep getting in and out of their cars? And I was like, but they were classy, they were dressed.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden I'm like, what happened? The prostitutes just and you don't leave nothing to the imagination. I'm like,
Well, just in case you see a decent one, can you get her number and then pass it on to me?
you know what?
Thank you.
If I have enough nerve to walk up to you,
Leah?
So you said something about how people don't have anyone nowadays. Do you think that has anything to do with the fact that birth rates are falling internationally people aren't getting married, people aren't getting into relationships, and there are even government efforts to encourage people to have children or to get married. And everyone complains about loneliness and about not having human social contact, and yet absolutely no one is doing anything to change their behaviors.
I don't really know. Can you do your question like a shorter version?
I guess, why are birth rates falling? Why aren't people getting into relationships despite complaining about loneliness and desiring human contact in relationships?
Have you ever been to Ukraine? Afghanistan? People have sex and have kids like rabbits. Look, when are you going to be ready for marriage? I mean, you're focused on school and knowing what little I know of you and many women out there. You're not satisfied with an AA degree. You're not satisfied with a bachelor's degree. You have entered the man's world in the sense that, you know, this whole thing, this structure that you see for the past 5,000 years, it's been created by men. It matters very little whether you like it or not. The culture now creates a different kind of men and different kind of women. For you to survive, you are now as ambitious as a man is. And the roles are no longer clear. For many, many, many thousands of years, you knew what you were. Leah, you marry at the age of 15. By the time you're 25, you got like 4 or 5 kids. And your kids are the source of your meaning and the source of your despair. That's what it is. Now that scenario has changed. Okay, you have walked into the public domain, primarily a man's domain, and now you have the desires that men have. You want to prosper very much like a man. Have you ever been to this tower building, 7th floor? All women. Deans, VP, P. Sometimes you wonder, you know. I mean, you really have to wonder. So, you spend 8 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon, sometimes 6 at Laney College. And then you go home. Your kids haven't seen you, your husband, your wife. Let's just say, since your question comes from a woman's aspect or perspective, your husband hasn't seen you, then you go home. And if you happen to be in an administrative position, you got to be on your email, because disaster at Laney can happen at any time, or a company, whatever. The husband gets to see you less, your kids get to see you less. But by the time you get to that particular position in life, you're not 20 anymore, you're not 30 anymore. You're about like 35, 40 almost. How many kids can a 40-year-old woman have? I mean, they've been trying to prosper in society. They want to be their own person. They want to have their own voice. So by the time you're ready for marriage, you're like 35, 36. You have to knock on many, many doors. You have to walk through those doors. You have to kind of obtain what that particular space has to offer you, process them, coming to realize it's not enough, move up the ladder, okay? Then at a certain point you say, you know what? I want to get married now. All right, now get married. And then from nowhere, your body says, and your psyche, despite what your philosophy of life has always been. I don't want to have children. This world sucks. I don't want to raise a kid in this society. Then you have a child. How old are you? 35. What else do you expect? I mean, when you have this change in culture, well, you know, I mean, consider what's happening in Japan. You can buy robots, all of them looking like Angelina Jolie. And then you create porn where people can self-pleasure. You have a companion as a robot, you've given yourself pleasure. Why the hell would you need to go out there? And all this talk now about relationships not going well, who the hell wants to risk that? You know, so you know what Japan does? They go to these tiny little villages, remote villages, where people have not been contaminated by technology and modern life. They give these women incentives. Come to the city and we'll give you an apartment, we'll give you this, we'll give you that. The only thing we want is for you two guys to be social. Go to bars, hang out in bars, and have men be attracted to you. Marry them. Have sex with them, have babies. Why? Because the population is dropping. There are lots of reasons. You know, there was a point where parents would push you into marriage. Now parents don't really have the power to tell you get married. And even if they say, it's time for you to get married, you say, Mom, I'm not ready. Don't have any money, not done with school, don't have a house, don't have a savings, have nothing. And parents these days, man, they're stuck in their own shit. They can't be helpful at all or useful in any way. So by the time your life, you know, gets a taste of little stability, you're like almost dead. And you get married to a 70-year-old. I'm very angry now. Mirna, you okay? You want a cough drop? Yeah. And it's not even useful to tell people get married. They're just not ready. It's like this culture doesn't create people who are mature in any way. You know, people smoke weed all the time, they drink all the time, watch porn all the time, they're lonely, depressed, sad, fucked up all the time. What the hell do you do with these people? Nothing. You can't do much with these people. Even if they were to get married, it's not going to last. Even if they were going to have children, they're not going to be great parents. Yeah, and then, yeah.
Do you think it's possible to have kids like at this time that aren't like kids and technologies by like the way they're raised? Or do you think that?
I only know one way of answering this question, which is the following. And this is like 1980, I think. When I was getting my bachelor's at San Francisco State, Abi, Cassie, and myself, we knew this professor. His name was David Long. His first marriage didn't go well. His second marriage went really, really well. I've been in touch with him for about over 20 years. But when he had his first daughter named Alexis, second named Helen, they decided to leave Sacramento. It wasn't a very big city, but I suppose it was in the 1980s. And he said, you know what? And he taught philosophy. And he had visited Greece, he had gone to India, so he had tasted, you know, people of different culture and how different cultures create, you know, certain temperaments and narratives for their own citizens. And he said, you know what, I am now obligated to raise relatively healthy kids, psychologically speaking. He said Sacramento is not a very ideal place to raise kids. So he moved to Georgetown. I haven't been to Georgetown for over 25, 30 years, but Georgetown, population 600. It's like above Sacramento. Population 600. He has a cabin, 600 square feet. 3 people occupy it. You're given a land that's about his land, I think, was about an acre, but it's usually 5 acres big. It's all trees. And no Costco's, one mechanic shop, one Chinese restaurant, no Pete's, no Starbucks, and one, something like a Safeway. Everybody knows everybody. Now, if you want, and there are no guarantees, I mean, because, you know, his first kid divorced, his second kid had a kid, but I think she also divorced. He kind of went mad, and I think it was because of his age and I mean, being an instructor in the classroom for like 30, 40 years, it's not easy because you really deal with a lot of shit, and not so much from students, well, from students and just your own self. I mean, any profession, you stay in it for too long, it begins to bother you, you know. It's like any other relationship. And so that's the only answer I got for you. You know, I mean, you may have a really healthy home, send your kids to school, public school in Oakland. They're going to come home with different words, and they're going to smell weird. And they're going to like have a different, you know, body expression. And you may want to control them, but you have no power. Society, school, I mean, it's something, you know, that all of you guys, parents, will eventually have to kind of wrestle with. You know, your 5-year-old daughter will have to share a bathroom with a boy, and you have no say in it. You may throw a fit, you can. It's going to go nowhere. My recommendation, raise your kid very, very, very religiously. Not because you believe in God, but because you want inside them to live shame and guilt. You know, it's like you have a great relationship with your father, you disappoint him, and you feel guilty for that. In the absence of that, you can shit all over your parents and you won't care. And then after a while, your parents just give up. And then in times of need, you burn too many bridges. Your parents are not going to be around for you. Yeah, Zamir.
I was just going to add on to what Leah has said about how people want to get along. I have read a recent study that said that single people are more happy to be in relationships than they can teach them about themselves.
Yeah, that's always true.
By yourself, working yourself, maybe something, distraction.
It's an easy thing to say when you're young. When you get to be a little older, when you're limping along, kidneys are failing, you know, you begin to have wrinkles, look bad, smell bad, taste bad. And then you say, man, I should have, you know, had a companion when I was 19. We could have grown older together and smellier together. So yeah, whenever you're in power, it's very easy to dismiss things. When you get a little older and poverty of health and looks, just physical mobility come about, then you will regret. Yeah. It's good to see all of you. Have a nice weekend. By the way, there is no school on Monday. Someone important was either born or died. So
Thank you.
See you next week.
you take care, man.
Okay.
See you Wednesday.